Good evening, everyone. We continue our study on First Samuel. We are now in verse 10 of chapter 7. Yesterday, we completed chapter 7, verse 9, and we highlighted the idea that as Samuel cried out, cried for help to the Lord for Israel, because they are seeing the Philistines coming. And the Lord answered him, and the Lord responded. That's where we left off. I had also indicated that the response of God is visual, it's vivid, it's unambiguous. Now, the reason why I'm highlighting this is because the way that God acts or takes action in this book itself is that God doesn't act every verse or every other verse. You find that God acts at very specific junctures, and whenever God acts, he does it for a very specific purpose. The whole book of First Samuel begins with the birth of Samuel. And as Samuel grew up, he became sort of the chosen one, because nobody has ever had the revelation of God. For a long, long time, Eli would have heard God, but it is very infrequent. And as Samuel grew up and he was shown to be the one that who has been talking to God, or God has been speaking to him, giving the evidence that whatever he says will come to pass. And we saw that in chapter 4. And as it progressed on, Samuel took on a profile of one who walks with God, one who knows God, one whom they can depend on when they need to know something about God. And here we are getting Samuel to make an offering. And this is not in Shiloh. This is in Kiriath Yarim, where it is on top of a hill. And that is the place where God has accepted the offering. And the people have responded by turning back to God, removing all the idols, all the Baalim and all the Ashtaroth, and coming back to God and confessing that they have sinned. And here, with the 1-year-old lamb being offered up to God, God responded. And that is very key in the next few verses. In verse 10, as we continue, now Samuel was offering up the burnt offering. The Understand that this whole word offering up, the burnt offering, they are both the same base words. Both the same base words. Just to recall and to recap, there is a stone, you put the animal here, and then you have the fire going. And then with the fire, you have smoke. So the rising smoke and the aroma is called the burnt offering. Now, in this case, as Moses, the text is actually quite clear in the Hebrew that it is as Moses was offering up, so it is during the process. And this is a very how should you say, not a very timely event. They chose this because they were in the middle of a ritual, the burnt offering ritual. The Philistines came near. Drew near means approach them, right? Approach. They were approaching God by the burnt offering. This is approach God. And the Philistines were approaching the Israelites to go into battle. The way that God responded was as follows. In this next few lines, the Lord thundered with a great thunder on that day against the Philistines, confused them so that they were routed before Israel. Now, there are a lot of words in there that we need to expand a little bit. First of all, the Lord thundered with a great thunder. These are two similar English words, but they are not the same Hebrew word. So let's break this down. Thundered here in the first place is caused to crash. Caused to crash, I would say crash violently. This is the expression, right? The expression is God caused something so violent to burst out. That's the idea of thundered. God caused something to burst out in, and then it says here, a great thunder. The great thunder isn't a thunder. The word isn't a thunder, unfortunately. This would be a great sound. So God caused to thunder, but it is not just a thunder in the English. It's a violent crashing of sound, and so this is called the great sound. It is whenever you read the word great, it really denotes the magnitude of the sound, the violence, the violent level, I would say, violent level of the sound, right? How loud. All of these will be meaningful, right? And so God was the one who responded, and he responded by the sound, like the thunder. Now, if you recall in Exodus chapter 19, when they were gathered at Mount Sinai, on the foothills of Mount Sinai, and God showed himself to the people through lightning, through smoke, through thunder, through earthquakes. And can hear the voice of God, but they can't see God. And they were so scared. And so God showed his presence one more time. And the thunder came with such violence on that day. But it was against the Philistines. The interesting here is that the sound came upon. This would be upon the Philistines. It might read as if it was above them, which means that they would be the one who would feel the greatest impact of this sound. And the roaring of the sound would have thundered in a way where the ground might have shaken. And it was upon the Philistines, and it confused them. Now, this word confused is a very interesting word. You should go back and read Judges chapter 4. The war with Sisera. And it was a time when Deborah was the female judge, and they went against this people in the north, and that word is used to actually confuse them. What do you mean by confuse them? This word is bring them into confusion, in a commotion. What else? Being troubled, not knowing what's happening. Right? These are all very good words to use. To run about aimlessly. These are all good words to use. And so let me just explain what that might mean to us today. That when God sent this incredible sound, now it may not just be one or twice, but it is so significant. The thundering and the crashing of the sound is so great, and it's upon only the Philistines. Of course, the rest would hear it, but the main central impact would be above the Philistines. And as it came crashing down on them, they were all troubled, confused, wondering what is happening, why the sound, and they began to be disarrayed. I think that would be a good picture there. So there's a picture. The word is just not confused that they are wondering what's happening, but they are running about aimlessly in total disarray. The battle formation was lost. And then this part came, and they were routed before Israel. Now, the word routed is caused to be struck. Caused to be struck, inflicted. What else? Stumble. And you will find that this whole phrase is a pair, right? Thundered with a great thunder, confused them, and they were routed before Israel. You find that to be an a B, and a C. All three speaks about the same thing, right? Speaks about the same thing. The thunder happened. The thunder happened. Huge thundering upon them, and then confused them all, and they were struck dead in their tracks. They were inflicted. They were hurt. Now, this word before Israel needs us no introduction to the face of Israel, meaning the Israelites were looking down from Mizpah and saw what God did. And that is why I am suggesting that this is how God answered Samuel. You call for help, here I am, and this is what I am doing, which is why it's visual, vivid, and unambiguous. It is nothing that they can do. This is not a bomb that they threw at them. This is God acting supernaturally upon the Philistines. And as they called out to God, God answered and responded. Now, that is what verse 10 is very vividly demonstrating the hand of God. The Israelites at this point in time were actually surprised by the Philistines because while they are doing the ritual of the burnt offering, they were attacked. And so you see God delivering, saving them, helping them, rescuing them. That's what cry for help actually mean. And so when God responds with help, rescue, saving. And so they call this probably a salvation of God's hand, right? And so it was miraculous, it was incredible, it was awesome, it was unambiguous, and they all know that this can be nobody else except God Himself. In verse 11, the men of Israel, notice it's the men of Israel. And it is specifically mentioned because these would be the fighting men. The fighting men, the army of Israel went out. Now, this this word here is to go out, right? Go out of Mitzpah. Now, I think Mitzpah is a gathering place. And in that gathering place, they left that assembly and they pursue. This word, after they left, they pursued. Pursue is to chase after and gives you a picture. It's following from behind. These are very vivid imagery that is being placed in the words. So the word pursue is a good word in English, but in a more literal, vivid fashion, they were chasing after or following behind the Philistines because they were in a total disarray, not knowing what to do. And now this word is to strike them. It's to cause to kill them. Right? Cause to kill them. This is struck them down, basically. One word is cause to kill them. And basically is to bring them down and to win in this battle. And this is as far as below Betkar. Not sure where this place is, but I think this is somewhere towards the south, right? Towards the south, I would think. And what happens is you will find that Mitzpah, let's say they are here at Mitzpah, and the Philistines were all below, right? The Philistines were all below. And they came chasing them down, struck them down, and went all the way to Betkar, meaning they were completely routed. The Philistines had no reply because God had already inflicted upon them such confusion. Now, maybe the sound was so loud and is still ringing in their ears, and they were totally in disarray. So the words are really describing the visuals, right? Not so much how the Philistines felt, but looking at the Philistines, how they behaved. Verse 12 is after everything is over. So you see, all these are giving us a lot of information just in one verse, and how they fought them, how they killed them, how they chased them. And then in verse 12, this is, and then after all this is over, Samuel took a stone. The word stone here is an even, and that would be, I would think this is a big stone. I think this is a big stone because it is supposed to be a monument. So you can call it a monument stone. How big? You can just imagine that. And so Samuel took the stone, and then it says, set it. The word set means to put in place. Put in place. We don't know how deep, how far, how wide, but he actually put it in place. That's what it would mean. And then the place is between Mitzpah and the Shen. The Shen is not a restaurant, but the Shen is it seems that it is a shop stone. So if you think of this as mitzvah, and somewhere here is a stone, and this is called the shen. It's a jagged stone. And then he would put the stone to commemorate somewhere here. I'm just giving you an example. And so this is a piece of stone. Right? I'm just showing you a stone. And that stone becomes a memorial, a monument. And it is called Even, not even, Even Ha Atzer. Now, this is the Hebrew. Even Ha Atzer. And so they just took the Even and Atzer here. So Even Atzer. It's not Ebenezer. That's a very English way of calling a Hebrew name. It's Even HaEzer. And this is a commemoration stone. It's nothing, it's, how should you say, it's, I'm not sure whether we are talking about the same place where they were fighting the Philistines in chapter 4. They were gathered at Ebenezer, and the Philistines were at Aphek, and they came together and fought. Now that place is also called Ebenezer. It's a place name. This one here is a stone name, and they are two different things. Now, what do you mean Ebenezer? What is Ebenezer? Ebenezer literally means, let me put it a different color. The Even is stone. Ezer means help. And of course, help of God. And so the stone commemorates that God came to their aid, right? Came to their aid. And so this stone is important because every time they talk about the stone, Even HaEzer, they would remember that God was the one who sounded the thunder and caused them completely disarray. They can't hear anything. And the Israelites went, chased them, struck them down, and sent them home, basically. Now, that is a very important element because in Hebrew culture, names are given to remind them of place events, things that has taken place around that area. So whenever you read Isaac goes somewhere, Jacob goes somewhere, puts a stone, names it something, they shake hands, they give a name, they made a covenant, and they gave that place a name, gave the well a name. And so all of these are very Semitic culture, a Hebrew culture. And so this was a great victory, and God helped because they called upon God. Samuel did the praying for them, interceded. God came, God did what he said he would do to help them. And so now they have put a stone to commemorate that God helped them. Right? So it means thus far the Lord has helped us. Now it says thus far. I think this word here may require a bit of change. I wouldn't use thus far. I would use the word here. Right here, the Lord has helped us. Obviously, the word can mean thus far in the English, but by context, I would prefer the word here. At this place, God, the Lord, has helped us, and that would be Even Ha'adzer, right? Or Ebenezer in the English. All right. Now in verse 13, so the Philistines were subdued. And what do you mean by subdue in the first place? We're talking about the Philistines. The word subdued is called was were humbled. Okay, the word is humble, brought down to subjection. Well, I guess you could say brought low. That is where the Philistines were. Uh, if you want to see it in a more vivid way, on their knees. They had no reply to God and the Israelites. Now, this is not the usual word of humble before God. This is a typical word of a war when the victorious side imposes on the vanquished. Now, if you recall in chapter 4, the Philistines, when they heard the ark of God came and there was an uproar, that was the people shouting. But in this case, it was God sending the thunder down. It was so loud that they were totally confused out of their wits. That is nothing like the roar of the Israelites with the Ark of the Covenant. And with that, the Philistines, remember, they were saying, if you do not want to serve the Israelites, go fight them and make them serve you. And here, the Philistines were humbled. You can say that they were completely defeated. And they did not come anymore within the borders of Israel. We talk about border. This is really with regards to the territory. Somehow they know that there is an invisible line on the ground that when you cross that line, you would have crossed into Israel's territory. And so they had actually came across Israel territory for a while now. And in this particular case, they came so far in, which is beyond Ekron, into Mitzpah, where they were gathered. Now, the text actually continues to say, and the hand of the Lord was against Philistine all the days of Samuel. What does that mean? It means that during the days of Samuel, God was protecting Israel from the Philistines, right? That's how we can read this. The Lord's hand was against the Philistines, means the power of God, the authority of God was holding the Philistines at bay. That is another way of saying it, was against the Philistines. Keep at bay. Make sure that they do not misbehave. I guess that would be a good way of expressing it. That the Philistines dare not have any funny ideas while Samuel was around, because it was Samuel who called for help on behalf of the Israelites that God had heard. And so God is showing that Samuel is the one that he has favored. In the days of Samuel, there were no Philistines problem. As we come to a close of chapter 7, this gives us a bit of information about this idea. Crossing did not come anymore within the borders of Israel. What does that mean? It means that in the past, the cities which the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to Israel. They had come in to take cities that belonged to Israel, and that was their encroachment. So this idea of restored is shuv. Now you recall this word shuv means to turn, right? To return, to turn back, to repent. So within this context, they are cities, they are not people, right? The cities are now returned back to Israel, the rightful owner, returned back to its original, to the original state. Meaning, before they came across the border, it belonged to Israel. They came across the border and they took over from Israel. They took what from Israel? They took Gath and Ekron. And these were the two cities that had the tumor and the mice as well. And so these are Israelite cities that were displaced by the Philistines, and now they handed back to Israel. This is what we would call a peace treaty. In the peace treaty, Israel delivered their territory from the hand of the Philistines. Now, listen, look at this word, delivered. The word delivered literally means caused, right? Caused to, how should we say? Caused to rescue, right? Caused to rescue, caused to take away. And that is the word delivered. It is to save, to pluck out from the hand, right? And so now we have a very interesting expression. It was restored to Israel. It was delivered from their territory. So it tells us this, that in the entire episode, the cities which were taken from the Philistines were restored to Israel. Now, it gives us a picture. I'm just going to share with you my thoughts. It's not in the text anywhere. Where they were running away from Mitzpah, and they were supposed to go to Bethkar. I think they would have passed Ekron and Gath. And they run back to their own land. And as they were running back, the Israelites took back the land. Now, this is how I would see the events happening. And after they took back Gath and Ekron, the final word here, and then appears again. So means and then. After the restoration of Gath and Ekron, and Gath and Ekron had lords or elders, they were also removed. And so the Israelites did not go in to take the Philistines' country, but got back what they originally had. Now, one of the interesting things is that when they came to take the place, they knew what land to take and what land not to touch. And so with this, there was peace between Israel and the Amorites. Now, the Amorites, right, is actually a, how should you say, a word that probably declares themselves greater than God. No, to say they are greater. And so perhaps greater than God. What I'm trying to say is with the Amorites, it seems that the Amorites is a generic term that encapsulated all the natives of the land, whether it's the Canaanites, whether it's the Philistines, whether it's the people in Bashan, as long as they are not the known tribes that we know called the Ammonites, the Moabites, and the Edomites. The rest of them, whatever names they may be called in their people group, was lumped into a description called Amorites. And here we can see in verse 14, the Philistines are also called Amorites. And here we have the word peace. Peace is shalom. There is shalom. There is completeness, right? Completeness. What do you mean by completeness? Well, they are now in a state where the Philistines are not coming over the borders. They dare not come over the borders. The Israelites have taken back Gath and Ekron. And with that, there were no more battles. The Philistines won't come over. The Israelites decided not to fight. And so at the end of the day, this is called shalom. And this will give us an idea. Peace is more than a word. It's more than a feeling. It is to view the state where all parties, the surrounding, the environment, the condition are all in a complete sound state. Nobody wants to fight. They've taken back. It is complete. Before they took back the land, it was incomplete. Now it's complete. The Philistines are not coming over. They dare not come over. So it's not just one day. It is a period of time for as long as Samuel was around. Let's go to our next two verses and we will end. In our last two verses, this is what we call a pericope. It's a sidebar. It's just giving us information. It is not describing the events, right? And so this word here now, this is and then this is after the incident at Mitzpah. And if you recall, if you can imagine yourself there, nobody would ever dispute Samuel. And so Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life. Verse 15. Which means that he was judged until the day he died, like Eli. Verse 16. Now, he used to go annually. The idea of annually is interesting. It is, how should we say? It could be as often as or as needed. So it's not annually like you go once a year, right? It's not once a year kind of concept. It means that he moves around from Bethel in the north, Gilgal next to the Jordan River in the south, and Mitzpah, I think, would be the south of Jerusalem as well. And he judged Israel in all these places. You need to understand the idea of judging. The word judge means to govern, right? That is an idea, right? It is to decide on cases. Now, he is not a modern day court judge, but he is the one who would make decisions for the nation and who would decide what to do for the nation. He has a power to punish or condemn, depending on the law that is invoked to sentence people, right? That would be the idea. So he is what we call an Elohim. He is a very powerful person because he can decide whether you live or you die, because he carries that authority. And then when he goes on the circuit, after going to all these places, and then he will return. Remember, return, shuv. Go back to original. So where is he based? Ramah. Ramah is in the hills of Ephraim, right? The hills of Ephraim. That was where his father lived, right? Elkanah. Now he stays at the same place. This is, I guess you can say, this is his hometown. And he is most comfortable in the hometown. Although he was given to God, he was never, how should you say, he is always at work for God. Not necessarily in the tabernacle, but as long as he is serving God, he is serving God all the days of his life. Notice, he was given up by Hannah to God. And you can see this is a life work, serving the Lord. We are tying back the loose ends of chapter 1 and first part of chapter 2 to the life of Samuel in the ministry. Now, in the way that I had able to calculate all the days of Samuel's judging Israel is about 13 years. About 13 years. And shortly before Saul died, Samuel died. And so we are told that his house was there, yes. And there he judged Israel because that was the home base. And he built there an altar to the Lord. This is in Ramah. He is not a priest, so he has he's just got a regular altar. The main tabernacle was moved from Shiloh to Nov, and later, after Saul lost Nov, it was moved to Gibeon. And that would be where the tabernacle finally ended. Now, I have tried to give us a bird's eye view because every verse is pregnant with information, but it's contained in the Hebrew. And I'm trying to actually explain and make the episodes more vivid as how I would think the Hebrew would be expressing it, so that you can have a better feel of the text itself. Now, with this, we come to the end of chapter 7.